The massive crystal dome of the council chamber stretched high above Jake Morrison as he walked through the gleaming corridors of Nexus Prime. His black diplomatic uniform felt heavier today, weighted down by 3 years of frustration and broken promises. The alien station hummed with activity around him, thousands of beings from dozens of species going about their daily business. Most barely glancing at the human ambassador. Jake paused at the entrance to the main chamber, watching the floating platforms that held representatives from 12 different alien species. Each platform was designed for its occupants' specific needs. The Kithara used tall crystalline spires that matched their insectoid bodies. The Draconians preferred heated metal platforms that glowed red in the dim lighting. The Altarians floated in bubbles of dense gas that kept their delicate forms protected. At the center of it all sat Speaker Veltar, the current leader of the Galactic Council. The Kithara was nearly 10 feet tall, his 4 arms moving in complex patterns as he communicated with his staff through clicking sounds that the translation system converted into words. His compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights like tiny mirrors, making it impossible to read his emotions. Jake took his place on the human platform, a simple raised circle with basic seating. It was positioned lower than the others, a subtle reminder of humanity's junior status in the council hierarchy. He had complained about this arrangement many times over the past 3 years, but the response was always the same. New species must earn their place through service and compliance. The session began with routine matters. Trade disputes between the Zephyrians and Altarians, resource allocation for the Outer Rim colonies, mining rights in the Vega system. Jake listened with half attention, his mind focused on the report he had received that morning from Admiral Brooks. Another human battalion had been wiped out on Kepler 186F while trying to stop a civil war between 2 alien factions. 47 human soldiers dead. Their names would be added to the growing list of casualties that the Council dismissed as necessary sacrifices for galactic peace. Jake had memorized every name, every face. Captain Rodriguez from Texas, Sergeant Kim from California, Private Johnson from Ohio, all dead because the Council refused to let human forces use effective tactics, instead forcing them to follow ancient protocols that prioritized alien property over human lives. Speaker Veltar's voice cut through Jake's thoughts. The translation system made his clicking speech sound cold and mechanical. The Proxima liberation has been completed successfully. The rebellious elements have been eliminated and order restored. Jake felt his hands clench into fists. Eliminated. As if the dead humans were just numbers in a report. He stood slowly, feeling the attention of the chamber shift toward him. This was unusual. Human representatives rarely spoke during these sessions, unless directly asked. Speaker Veltar, Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I must object to your characterization of the Proxima operation as successful. We lost 137 human soldiers in that campaign. A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the alien representatives. The Draconian delegate, a massive reptilian creature named Korith, made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. The junior species concerns itself with acceptable losses, he rumbled. Veltar's compound eyes focused on Jake with what seemed like irritation. Ambassador Morrison, your species volunteered to serve as peacekeepers for the Council. Military casualties are an inevitable part of such service. These losses, while regrettable, were within acceptable parameters for the mission's objectives. Acceptable to whom? Jake asked, his voice rising slightly. Those soldiers had families. They had hopes and dreams beyond dying on some alien world for causes they barely understood. And they died because you forced them to follow tactics that were outdated when your great-grandparents were young. The chamber fell silent. Several alien delegates exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a subtle buzz of activity. Jake could see shock on the faces of those species, whose expressions he had learned to read. No one spoke to the council leadership this way. Speaker Veltar rose to his full height, his forearms spreading wide in a display of dominance. Ambassador Morrison, you forget your place. Humanity joined this council as a junior member. Your species shows promise, but you lack the wisdom that comes with millennia of galactic governance. The protocols you question have maintained peace for over 2,000 years. Peace for who? Jake shot back. Your species? The council members? Because from where I sit, it looks like you've created a system where humans do all the dying while you take all the credit. The Altarian representative, a flowing mass of translucent material named Sithala, pulsed with colors that indicated distress. The human speaks with dangerous emotion. Perhaps it would be wise to consider reassignment to less stressful duties. Jake laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Less stressful? Like what? Cleaning your stations? Mining your asteroids? Building your ships? We already do all of that too. The only thing we don't do is sit in these fancy chambers and make decisions about other people's lives. Korath leaned forward on his platform, his massive claws scraping against the metal. Careful, human. Your species exists at the Council's pleasure. We have protected you from the chaos of unguided development. Without our guidance, humanity would still be struggling to leave its home system. Protected us? Jake's voice was incredulous. You mean controlled us. Every technology we develop has to be approved by your committees. Every trade agreement needs your permission. Every military action requires your oversight. And what do we get in return? The privilege of dying for your causes. Speaker Veltar's clicking grew more rapid, indicating agitation. Enough. Ambassador Morrison, your emotional outburst demonstrates exactly why younger species require guidance. You think only of immediate concerns, not the broader implications of galactic stability. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it. The point where humanity either accepted permanent second-class status or chose a different path. He thought of Admiral Brooks waiting in human space for his signal. He thought of the thousands of human colonies that had grown tired of council restrictions. He thought of the families who would never again see their sons and daughters come home from council wars. Speaker Veltar, Jake said quietly, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. I hereby formally request that humanity be granted full voting rights and equal representation on this council. We have served faithfully for 3 years. We have shed our blood for your peace. We have contributed our knowledge and labor to your civilization. We have earned the right to be treated as equals. The silence stretched for long moments. Then Veltar began to click rapidly, the sound building until it filled the entire chamber. The translation system struggled to keep up with his words. Equal representation? You jest, surely. A species that has barely learned to walk among the stars, demanding equality with civilizations that predate your entire evolutionary history. Other delegates joined in what Jake realized was laughter. The Draconians roared. The Altarians pulsed with bright colors. The crystalline resonance chimed in harmony. They were all laughing at him, at humanity, at the very idea that humans deserved respect. Jake waited for the laughter to die down. When it did, he spoke with calm certainty. Then humanity formally withdraws from all council agreements, effective. Immediately, we will no longer serve as your military force. We will no longer provide our labor for your projects. We will no longer accept your oversight of our development. The laughter stopped abruptly. Speaker Veltar's compound eyes fixed on Jake with what might have been surprise. You cannot be serious. Humanity needs the council. Without our protection, without our trade networks, Without our guidance, your species will collapse within months." Jake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a pleasant expression. "We'll see about that, won't we?" He activated his communicator, speaking clearly so everyone in the chamber could hear. "Admiral Brooks, this is Ambassador Morrison. Execute Protocol 7. All human personnel are to withdraw from Council space immediately. We're coming home." As Jake turned to leave the chamber, Speaker Valtar called after him. "This is foolishness, Morrison. You will return within the year, begging for readmission. The galaxy is far too dangerous for an isolated species to survive." Alone, Jake paused at the entrance, looking back at the assembled aliens one last time. "Maybe you're right, Speaker, but we'd rather face that danger as free beings and live safely as your slaves." With that, he walked out of the council chamber, leaving behind 3 years of service and stepping into an uncertain but independent future. Admiral Lisa Brooks stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiance, watching the holographic display that showed human positions throughout council space. Red dots marked military bases. Blue dots showed research stations. Green dots indicated civilian colonies, and yellow dots represented industrial facilities. There were so many dots that the display looked like a star map, each one representing thousands of human lives that would need to be evacuated within. Next 72 hours. The communication from Jake Morrison had been brief but clear. Protocol 7 was the emergency withdrawal plan that humanity had developed in secret over the past year. Every human commander, every station director, every colony leader had a sealed packet of orders waiting for this exact moment. Lisa had hoped they would never need to use it. She turned to her communications officer, Lieutenant Commander Kevin Ross. "Send the activation codes to all human facilities. Priority Alpha. I want every ship, every station, every outpost to begin. Immediate withdrawal procedures." Kevin's fingers moved quickly over his console. Within minutes, the coded message was racing through hyperspace to reach human installations across 47 different star systems. Lisa watched as confirmation. Signals began arriving on her display. One by one, the human commanders acknowledged their orders and began the largest coordinated military withdrawal in galactic history. On the research station orbiting Kepler 442b, Captain Ben Parker received the signal while reviewing the days. Experiments. The station had been humanity's most advanced research facility, where their best scientists studied exotic matter under council supervision. The aliens had insisted on overseeing all research, claiming that younger species needed guidance to avoid dangerous discoveries. Ben activated the station's communication system, his voice echoing through the corridors, where 300 human researchers were working. "All personnel, this is Captain Parker. We have received orders for immediate evacuation under Protocol 7. All experiments are to be terminated and equipment prepared for transport. Departure begins in 6 hours." Dr. Nancy Williams looked up from her exotic matter containment unit, confusion clear on her face. She had been working on this project for 2 years, making discoveries that had revolutionized human understanding of physics. "Captain, what about our research? We're on the verge of a breakthrough in faster-than-light communication." Ben's expression was grim but determined. "Pack everything, Doctor. Every computer, every sample, every piece of equipment. We're taking it all with us. The Council oversight ends today." Similar scenes played out across Council space as humans began dismantling facilities they had built and operated for years. On the industrial world of New Olympia, Director Kate Sullivan walked through the massive shipyards that employed over 10,000 human workers. These facilities had been producing vessels for 6 different Council species, using human engineering expertise to build ships that the aliens designed but could not manufacture themselves. Kate's deputy, Manager Carl Davis, approached with a worried expression. Director, the Altarian supervisors are demanding an explanation. They say we cannot simply stop production. They have contracts. Kate smiled coldly as she watched human workers beginning to power down the assembly lines. Tell the Altarians that their contracts were with human workers, not human slaves. As of now, we work for ourselves. The alien supervisors had always treated the human workers as highly skilled but ultimately replaceable labor. They made decisions about production schedules, quality standards, and safety protocols without consulting the humans who actually did the work. Now they stood helplessly as the humans systematically shut down every system, packed every tool, and prepared to leave. Supervisor Kylanth, a tall Altarian whose gaseous form shimmered with agitation, confronted Kate directly. This is unacceptable. You cannot abandon your responsibilities. These facilities represent years of investment. Kate looked at the alien supervisor with barely concealed contempt. Your investment was in our labor, not our loyalty. You paid U.S. wages, but never gave us respect. You used our skills, but never valued our opinions. Did you really think we would stay forever? As the evacuation continued, the true scope of human integration into galactic society became apparent. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Hayes led his team of military advisors away from the Draconian training facility on Rigel 7. For 3 years, these humans had been teaching Draconian soldiers advanced combat tactics, helping them develop strategies that had made their military the most feared force in Council space. General Vorthek, the massive Draconian commander, watched with growing alarm as the humans packed their equipment and deleted their training programs. Colonel Hayes, you cannot leave now. My warriors depend on your knowledge. We have campaigns planned that require human tactical expertise. Ryan paused in his packing, looking at the alien general who had never once asked for human opinions. On strategy, only demanded their compliance with Draconian traditions. General, you have been learning our tactics for 3 years. Perhaps it is time you started thinking for yourselves. The evacuation revealed dozens of similar situations throughout Council space. Human doctors who had been quietly managing disease prevention protocols on alien worlds. Human engineers who maintained the Seabird technology systems that kept space stations operational. Human diplomats who facilitated trade negotiations between species that refused to deal directly with each other. On the communication relay station at Wolf 359, Director Sam Washington supervised the removal of human-built equipment while monitoring Council communications. The aliens were beginning to realize that humans had been involved in far more activities than they had imagined. Panic messages flowed between Council worlds as administrators discovered that systems they had taken for granted were failing without human maintenance. The medical crisis was already beginning. Dr. Amy Chun, who had served as Chief Medical Liaison on the Council's primary hospital station, watched as her human staff prepared to depart. The aliens had always viewed human medical knowledge as primitive, but they had quietly relied on human adaptability and innovation to solve problems that their rigid medical systems could not handle. Dr. Zephyra, the station's Altarian medical director, pleaded with Amy to reconsider. Dr. Chun, you must understand. We have plague outbreaks on 3 worlds that require immediate attention. Your medical teams are the only ones with experience in cross-species disease treatment. Amy continued packing her research files, her voice calm but firm. Dr. Zephyra, for 3 years I have submitted reports recommending proactive disease prevention measures. Every recommendation was rejected as unnecessary human paranoia. You preferred to wait for crises and then expect us to solve them. As human ships began leaving Council space, they carried with them not just people and equipment, but institutional knowledge that had taken decades to accumulate. The humans had been teachers, maintainers, innovators, and problem solvers. They had filled gaps in Council society so seamlessly that the aliens had forgotten how dependent they had become. Admiral Brooks watched the evacuation reports flowing into her command center. Every human facility was meeting its departure schedule. There had been no violence, no sabotage, simply a quiet, professional withdrawal. The humans left behind clean facilities and completed their final shifts, but they took with them everything that made those facilities function. Captain Helen Ross, commanding the evacuation fleet's rear guard, recorded the final statistics. Over 2 million humans evacuated from Council space. 17 major industrial facilities shut down. 43 research stations emptied. Hundreds of smaller outposts abandoned. It was the largest population movement in galactic history. Completed in less than a week. As the last human transport cleared Council space, Admiral Brooks allowed herself a moment of uncertainty. Jake Morrison's gamble was bold, but it was still a gamble. Humanity was now truly alone among the stars, with no allies and no protection except what they could provide for themselves. But they were also free for the first time in 3 years. Free to make their own decisions, pursue their own research, and determine their own destiny. The Council had dismissed them as junior partners, but perhaps it was time to show the galaxy what humans could accomplish when they were not constrained. By alien oversight and tradition. The exodus was complete, but the real test was just beginning. 3 months had passed since the last human transport left Council space, and Director Sam Washington sat in his monitoring station at Wolf 359, analyzing the flood of intercepted communications from alien worlds. The new facility, built entirely with human technology and operated without any Council oversight, gave humanity its first clear view of galactic affairs from the outside. Sam scrolled through the latest reports while sipping his morning coffee. The Zephyrian Mining Consortium had lost another convoy yesterday, the 4th this week. Pirates had attacked the cargo ships carrying rare minerals from the Outer Rim, killing dozens of alien crew members and making off with millions of credits worth of materials. The pattern was becoming clear to Sam, even if the aliens had not yet understood it themselves. For decades, human patrol ships had quietly protected these trade routes. The humans had not been given credit for this work because the Council considered anti-piracy operations to be beneath the notice of advanced civilizations. The job had been assigned to humans as training exercises, a way to keep their military forces busy with simple tasks, while the important species focused on higher pursuits. Now those same trade routes were becoming death traps. The pirates, mostly outcasts from various Council species, had spent years learning human patrol patterns and tactics. When the humans disappeared, the pirates quickly realized that no one was coming to replace them. The Council species had simply assumed that trade route security was someone else's responsibility. Sam activated his communication system and contacted Admiral Brooks on Earth. Admiral, the situation in Council space is deteriorating faster than our projections suggested. The Zephyrians have filed formal complaints with the Council about inadequate trade protection, but no species wants to assign their own ships to patrol duty. Admiral Brooks appeared on the holographic display, her expression serious. What's the current loss rate, Sam? 17 freighters destroyed in the past month alone. The pirates are getting bolder because they know no one is hunting them anymore. The Altarian Trade Federation is reporting profit losses of 40% as shipping costs skyrocket. The communication was interrupted by an urgent signal from Dr. Amy Chun, who is now working at the new medical research facility on Mars. Her face appeared alongside Admiral Brooks, and Sam could see the concern in her expression. Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from the Kepler system. There's been an outbreak of Rigelian fever on 3 different worlds. Admiral Brooks frowned. That's a manageable disease. The Council medical system should be able to handle it easily. Amy shook her head grimly. That's just it, Admiral. They can't. The disease has mutated, and the standard treatments aren't working. From what I can gather from their transmissions, they've lost over 10,000 lives already, and the infection is spreading. Sam pulled up the relevant files on his system. Dr. Chun is right, Admiral. Our old medical protocols included regular genetic analysis of common diseases to watch for mutations. The Council medical establishment considered that to be unnecessary. Human paranoia. They preferred to treat diseases as static problems with permanent solutions. Amy leaned forward in her display. Admiral, I know we're not supposed to get involved, but I could have a treatment developed within days if I had access to tissue samples. The Council doctors are still trying to use treatments that were developed centuries ago. Admiral Brooks was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. Dr. Chun, prepare your analysis, but we don't make any moves until the Council formally requests our help. We're not their emergency response team anymore. As the weeks passed, the crisis. Our EPORTS multiplied. Captain Steve Miller, monitoring military communications from the new base at Alpha Centauri, watched as conflicts erupted across Council space. The civil war on Arcturus Prime had exploded into full violence after the two factions realized that the human peacekeepers who had been quietly mediating their disputes were gone. Admiral, Steve reported during the daily briefing, the situation on Arcturus Prime is getting worse. Both sides are demanding that their opponents surrender, but there's no neutral party to negotiate a ceasefire. The casualty reports suggest over 50,000 dead in the past week alone. Admiral Brooks studied the tactical displays that showed trouble spots throughout Council space. Red zones marked active conflicts, yellow zones showed developing problems, and green zones indicated stable regions. There was very little green on the map. How many of these conflicts were we managing before the withdrawal? She asked. Steve consulted his files. 47 active peacekeeping operations, plus another 23 situations where human advisors were providing mediation services. The Council leadership never announced these operations publicly because they considered internal conflicts to be embarrassing failures of galactic civilization. The economic crisis was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. Commander Janet Lee, analyzing trade data from the listening post at Proxima Centauri, reported that entire sectors of the galactic economy were beginning to collapse. The complex web of trade relationships that had developed over centuries depended on human maintenance and protection in ways that even the humans had not fully understood. Admiral, Janet explained during her briefing, the humans weren't just protecting individual trade routes. We were maintaining the entire infrastructure that made interstellar commerce possible. Communication relays, navigation beacons, emergency repair stations, fuel depots. The aliens thought these systems maintained themselves. The Council's response to the crisis was exactly what the humans had expected. Instead of working together to solve problems, the different species began blaming each other for failures and demanding that someone else take responsibility for fixing them. The proud Draconian Empire insisted that the insectoid Kithara should handle trade route security since they had the most chips. The Kithara responded that military escort duty was beneath their dignity and that the crystalline resonance should use their communication networks to coordinate anti-piracy efforts. Speaker Veltar called emergency session after emergency session, but each meeting devolved into arguments about jurisdiction and responsibility. The Council had been designed to govern through consensus and tradition, but those traditions had never accounted for the practical reality that humans had been handling most of the actual work. Dr. Patricia Lee, leading the xenobiology research team on Luna, made a discovery that shocked even the human leadership. While analyzing alien technology that had been evacuated from Council facilities, she found evidence that several supposedly advanced Council species had been secretly dependent on human innovation for decades. "Admiral," she reported during a secure briefing, "the Altarian atmospheric processors that we helped maintain weren't just using human labor. They were using human modifications to alien designs. The original Altarian technology was centuries out of date and barely functional. Our engineers had been quietly upgrading and improving their systems without the Altarians even realizing it." Admiral Brooks stared at the technical reports in disbelief. "Are you saying that their most advanced technology was actually human technology with alien labels?" "In many cases, yes. The Council species were so convinced of their own superiority that they never questioned why their ancient designs suddenly started working better after humans began maintaining them. They assumed it was proper maintenance rather than fundamental improvements." The revelation explained why so many alien systems were failing catastrophically, rather than simply requiring more maintenance. The humans had not just been operating Council technology, they had been secretly upgrading it to modern standards. Without human innovation, the aliens were discovering that much of their infrastructure was centuries obsolete. Sam Washington watched the intercepted communications with growing amazement as Council species began pointing fingers at each other with increasing desperation. The Draconians accused the Cathara of sabotaging trade routes to increase their own profits. The Altarians claimed that the Resonants were deliberately disrupting communications to hide their own failures. The Council was eating itself alive. "Admiral," Sam reported, "the latest intelligence suggests that 3 Council species are considering withdrawing from mutual defense agreements. The unity that they claimed had lasted for millennia is cracking under the first real stress they faced in centuries." Admiral Brooks allowed herself a small smile as she reviewed the reports. Jake Morrison's gamble was paying off even better than they had hoped. By simply walking away and letting the Council face reality without human support, humanity had exposed the fundamental weaknesses in their supposedly superior civilization. The aliens were learning that respect could not be demanded, only earned, and that taking someone for granted was a luxury they could no longer afford. The question now was whether they would learn this lesson in time to salvage their civilization, or whether their pride would drag them down into complete collapse. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal from Council space, Jake Morrison sat in his new office overlooking the Pacific Ocean from the headquarters of Earth's Department of Interstellar Affairs. The morning briefing reports covered his desk like fallen leaves, each one documenting another crisis in what had once been the stable galactic civilization. His assistant, Director Carol Stone, entered with the latest batch of communication intercepts. "Mr. Secretary," Corral said, placing the files on his desk, "we've received formal requests for assistance from 17 different Council species in the past week alone. The Altarian Trade Federation is offering payment rates 3 times higher than what the Council used to pay for military escorts." Jake looked up from the report about Civil War casualties on Arcturus Prime. The numbers kept climbing, and the pleas for human intervention were becoming more desperate each day. "What's our official response, Carol?" "The same as always, sir. We acknowledge their communications and remind them that humanity is no longer involved in Council affairs. Admiral Brooks has made it clear that all human military forces are committed to defending our own space." Through his office window, Jake could see the construction crews working on the new orbital defense platforms that protected Earth's solar system. The withdrawal from Council space had freed up enormous resources that were now being used to strengthen human defenses and develop new technologies. It was a luxury they had never enjoyed while serving as the Council's unpaid military force. The intercom on Jake's desk buzzed with a priority message from Admiral Brooks. Her voice carried a note of concern that Jake had learned to recognize. "Mr. Secretary, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. Long-range sensors are detecting a Draconian battle fleet moving toward the Sol system." Jake's expression hardened. This was what they had been preparing for, the inevitable attempt. by one of the Council species to force humanity back into submission. What's their estimated arrival time, Admiral? 18 hours at current speed. The fleet consists of 12 heavy cruisers and 4 dreadnoughts. It's commanded by General Korath himself. Carol looked worried as she recognized the name. Korath was the same draconian representative who had laughed at Jake's demands for equal treatment in the council chamber. His arrival could only mean that the draconians intended to use force where diplomacy had failed. Jake activated his secure communication system and contacted the other human colony leaders. Within minutes, the faces of governors and military commanders from 37 different worlds appeared on his display. The unity that humanity had developed during their years of council service was now their greatest strength. Governor Bill Jackson from New Australia spoke first. Mr. Secretary, our defense platforms are fully operational. If the Draconians want to fight, we're ready for them. Admiral Brooks joined the conference from her flagship. All human military forces are at full readiness. Our new defensive technologies have been tested and deployed. The Draconians are about to discover that we've learned a few things during our time away from Council oversight. The Draconian fleet arrived exactly on schedule, taking position just outside the Sol System's outer planets. General Korath's massive dreadnought, the Flame of Conquest, transmitted a message on all frequencies. His translated voice carried the same arrogant tone that Jake remembered from the council chamber. Humans of Earth, this is General Korath of the Draconian Empire. Your foolish experiment in independence has gone on long enough. The galaxy has descended into chaos because of your selfish withdrawal from your responsibilities. You will return to Council space immediately and resume your duties as peacekeepers. Jake took his time crafting a response, making sure that every word was carefully chosen. General Korath, this is Secretary Morrison of the Independent Human Federation. We appreciate your concern for galactic stability, but humanity's withdrawal from Council service was permanent. We suggest you return to Council space and work with your fellow species to address your problems. The response from Korath came quickly, his anger obvious even through the translation system. You have no choice in this matter, Morrison. The Council has voted to authorize military action to bring humanity back into compliance. You have 1 hour to surrender your defense platforms and prepare for escort back to Council space. Captain Steve Miller, commanding the defense station at Luna, reported that the Draconian ships were moving into attack formation. Their weapon systems were charging, and their shields were at full power. It was clear that Korath intended to back up his demands with force. Admiral Brooks gave the order that humanity had hoped never to hear. All defense platforms, prepare to engage. Show these aliens what humans can accomplish when we're not fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. The battle lasted only 40 minutes. The Draconian fleet had expected to face the same limited human forces that had served under Council restrictions for 3 years. Instead, they encountered defense systems that incorporated technology from dozens of different alien species, improved and enhanced by human innovation during the months of isolation. The human defense platforms used energy weapons that the Draconians had never seen before, shield systems that absorbed and redirected incoming fire, and tactical coordination that moved faster than the aliens could react. When the Flame of Conquest limped away from the Sol System with half its fleet destroyed or disabled, Korath's final transmission was very different from his opening demands. This is not over, humans. The Council will send larger fleets. You cannot stand against the combined might of 12 species. Jake's response was calm but firm. General, we have no desire for war with the Council, but we will defend ourselves against any aggression. Perhaps it would be wiser to focus on solving the problems in your own territory. As news of the failed Draconian attack spread through Council space, other species began to reconsider their own approaches to the human situation. The Altarian Trade Federation sent a delegation to negotiate privately for human escort services, offering payment rates that were 10 times higher than what the Council had paid. Jake met with the Altarian representatives in the neutral space station that humanity had built at Wolf 359. The aliens were nervous and desperate, their gaseous forms flickering with colors that indicated extreme stress. Ambassador Rethon led the delegation, his voice carrying none of the condescension that had characterized Council communications with humans. Secretary Morrison, our trade routes are collapsing. Pirate attacks have increased by 400% since your withdrawal. We need your protection. Jake studied the trade data that the Altarians had provided. The situation was indeed desperate, but he had learned the importance of negotiating from a position of strength. Ambassador Raythan, we appreciate your situation, but humanity is no longer in the business of providing services to Council species. Our military forces are committed to protecting human space. The negotiations continued for days, with other Council species sending their own delegations to request various forms of assistance. The resonants needed help maintaining their communication networks. The Kithara required human expertise to prevent their industrial facilities from collapsing. Even the proud Zephyrians admitted that they needed human medical knowledge to combat the plague outbreaks that were spreading through their territory. Each delegation received the same response from Jake. Humanity was no longer bound by Council authority and would not resume their old role as the galaxy's problem solvers. The aliens who had once dismissed humans as junior partners were now discovering that independence worked both ways. Dr. Patricia Lee's research team made another breakthrough that shocked the galactic community. By analyzing the alien technologies they had brought back from Council space, the humans developed faster than light communication systems that were centuries more advanced than anything the Council possessed. News of human technological advancement spread through Council space like wildfire. The species that had restricted human research and development were now watching in amazement as their former servants surpassed them in every field of science and engineering. The final blow to Council unity came when 3 smaller alien species formally requested permission to emigrate to human space. The cat-like feliner and the aquatic delphine had been treated as second-class citizens by the Council for centuries, and they saw humanity's independence as a model for their own liberation. Jake approved the immigration requests, welcoming the alien refugees to human colonies where they would be treated as equals rather than subjects. The sight of alien species choosing human protection over Council membership sent shockwaves through the galactic establishment. The proud civilization that had ruled the jewel galaxy for millennia was discovering that their authority meant nothing without the consent of those they governed, and that respect could not be demanded at gunpoint. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal from Council space, Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic station at New Geneva, watching the arrival of a ship he had never expected to see again. The vessel bearing the insignia of Speaker Veltar approached the human station slowly, its once proud hull showing signs of damage and poor maintenance that spoke volumes about the current state of Council civilization. Jake's aide, Director Carol Stone, joined him at the viewport with the latest intelligence reports. Mr. Secretary, the situation in Council space has reached complete collapse. The Zephyrian Mining Consortium has fragmented into 6 competing factions. The Altarian Trade Federation has lost 68% of its member worlds. 3 Council species have suffered total economic breakdown. Through the transparent aluminum window, Jake watched as the Kithara ship docked with their station. The contrast between the alien vessel and the human facility was striking. New Geneva represented the best of human engineering, built with technologies that surpassed anything the Council had ever possessed. The station's clean lines and efficient design stood in sharp contrast to the ornate, but failing grandeur of council architecture. Any word on the civil wars? Jake asked, though he suspected. He already knew the answer. Carol consulted her tablet. The conflict on Arcturus Prime has spread to 4 neighboring systems. The Draconian Empire is facing internal rebellions on 7 worlds. Even the Resonants are dealing with what they're calling harmonic disruptions in their crystalline cities. Jake nodded grimly. The intelligence reports painted a picture of galactic civilization in freefall. Without human peacekeepers to mediate conflicts, without human engineers to maintain infrastructure, without human doctors to manage health crises, the careful balance that had maintained council space for centuries had simply collapsed. The meeting room where Jake waited for Speaker Veltar was deliberately chosen to send a message. Unlike the Grand Council Chamber where they had last met, this was a simple conference room with basic furniture and no elevated platforms. Here they would meet as equals or not at all. When Veltar entered the room, Jake was shocked by the change in the Cathara leader. The once proud alien moved slowly, his compound eyes dim with exhaustion. His 4 arms, which had once gestured with authority and confidence, now moved hesitantly. The years of crisis had clearly taken their toll on the speaker, who had laughed at human demands for respect. Behind Veltar came a delegation that represented the remaining functional council species. Jake recognized Ambassador Raythan from the Altarians, General Korath from the Draconians, and several others who had dismissed humanity as a junior species worthy only of taking orders. Secretary Morrison, Veltar began, his translated voice lacking the arrogance that Jake remembered. I thank you for agreeing to this meeting. The situation in council space has become ... difficult. Jake gestured for the aliens to take their seats around the conference table. No special accommodations, no elevated positions, just chairs around a simple table. Speaker Veltar, I appreciate your visit, but I should point out that humanity is no longer part of council affairs. We have our own concerns to address. The irony was not lost on any of them. Outside the conference room windows, they could see the thriving human colonies of the New Geneva system. Ships from dozens of species moved through the space lanes, but now they flew under human protection and followed human regulations. 3 alien species had formally joined the growing Human Federation, choosing human leadership over council authority. General Korath, his massive form subdued by defeat, spoke next. Morrison, the galaxy is dying without human intervention. Trade routes are controlled by pirates. Diseases spread unchecked. Wars consume entire systems. We ... we need your help. Jake studied the faces around the table, seeing desperation where there had once been condescension. General, when humanity requested equal treatment in the council, you laughed at us. When we asked for voting rights, you dismissed us as children. When we demanded respect for our sacrifices, you called our losses acceptable. Why should we help you now? Veltar's compound eyes focused on Jake with what might have been regret. Because you are better than we are. Your species has shown compassion, even for those who treated you poorly. The refugees you have accepted, the medical aid you provided to the plague victims on Kepler Prime, the protection you gave to the Felenar colonies when we abandoned them. You help because it is right, not because it benefits you. The admission hung in the air like a weight. For the first time in galactic history, the council leadership was acknowledging that a younger species had surpassed them, not just in technology or military power, but in the moral authority to lead. Jake leaned back in his chair, considering his response carefully. Around the table, the alien delegates waited with obvious anxiety for his decision. Through the communication system, he could hear reports from Admiral Brooks about the continued success of human colonies and the growing list of species requesting to join the Human Federation. Speaker Veltar, Jake said finally, humanity has moved beyond the need for council approval or partnership. We have built something new, something better than what you offered us. The question is not whether we will help you, but whether you are willing to help yourselves. Veltar's confusion was obvious. I do not understand, Secretary Morrison. Jake activated the holographic display in the center of the table, showing a map of known space. Blue areas marked the growing human federation, which now included 43 different species and controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy. Red areas showed council space, fragmented and shrinking. Yellow areas marked neutral territories where various species were choosing sides. The Galactic Council is finished, Jake said calmly. Your system of hierarchical species superiority, your traditions of keeping younger civilizations in servitude, your entire philosophy of governance has proven to be a failure. But that doesn't mean your people have to suffer. He manipulated the display to show the constitution of the new interstellar federation that humanity had drafted. We are offering something different. A federation based on equality, mutual respect, and democratic representation. Every species gets a voice proportional to their population and contribution. No one rules over anyone else. Ambassador Rethan studied the document with growing amazement. This would mean the end of council supremacy, the end of the hierarchies that have existed for millennia. Yes, Jake agreed, and the beginning of something better. A government that serves all its members equally, that makes decisions based on merit rather than tradition, that treats every sapient being with dignity. General Korath rumbled with what might have been laughter. You are asking us to abandon everything our civilizations have believed for thousands of years. Jake smiled for the first time since the meeting began. General, your civilizations are collapsing because of what you believed for thousands of years. Perhaps it's time to try something new. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates argued that their species would never accept equality with those they had considered inferior. Others worried about losing the prestige and privilege that came with council membership. But as the discussion continued, the reality of their situation became impossible to ignore. Veltar was the first to speak the truth that they all knew. We have no choice. Our old ways have failed completely. If we do not change, our civilizations will die. One by one, the species representatives agreed to present the Federation Charter to their home governments. It would not be an easy transition. Jake knew thousands of years of ingrained superiority would not disappear overnight. But the alternative was the continued collapse of galactic civilization. 3 months later, Jake stood once again in an observation deck, this time watching the signing ceremony for the Interstellar Federation Charter. Representatives from 67 different species gathered in the Great Hall of New Geneva Station, putting aside millennia of tradition to embrace humanity's vision of cooperative governance. Speaker Veltar, now serving as interim representative for the Cathara people, approached Jake as the ceremony concluded. Secretary Morrison, I owe you an apology. When you first demanded respect for humanity, I saw it as the arrogance of youth. I did not understand that you were offering us wisdom that our ancient civilizations had forgotten. Jake watched as beings who had once considered themselves superior to all others worked together as equals to build a better future. Speaker Veltar, humanity didn't invent cooperation or democracy or respect for others. We just remembered that these things matter more than who is oldest or strongest or most technologically advanced. As the new Federation took its first steps toward governing the galaxy through consent rather than domination, Jake reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity's withdrawal from Council space had been a gamble, but it had forced the galaxy to confront the difference between authority and leadership, between commanding obedience and earning respect. The age of the Galactic Council was over, but the age of the Interstellar Federation was just beginning, built on the foundation that every species, no matter how young or old, deserve dignity and a voice in their own governance.